It's always easy to point the fingers and never actually do something. Yeah, it's always this. It's like it's always your fault. It's your fault. This is the video I was looking for. This game wasn't made for you, chat. Avowed was not made for you. It was made for certain audiences. You know. I'm curious.
How many times have you guys heard the line, "This game wasn't made for you"? How many times have you seen people running to the defense of a game and saying that, well, if you don't like it, stop talking about it? You know, they go and they start posting those memes where it's, you know, stop having fun, but they're still sitting on the couch playing the game. You know, this game is great as long as you don't have anybody screaming in your ear telling you that it's bad. Stop seeking out negative commentary and criticism on a game.
It was made for us. Awoken. No, chat. No. We are not awoken here.
You just want to have your viewpoint reinforced. Stop hitting yourself.
True.
That's what you're doing.
True.
I recently saw that somebody had posted an entire Reddit thread talking about me and my video on Avowed, saying that I am the one that's ruining commentary around games. I am destroying video games.
What the
video
fuck?
game community. You guys are helping by watching my videos in the first place. Shame on you. The even-handed criticism that I had in my Avowed video, where I was relatively soft on them in comparison to just about any other game or any other studio,
Mushrooms,
because there were
NPCs roasting and ignoring you. Of course it's NT for me. I'm not a shroom addict with a humiliation fetish.
parts of Avowed that I genuinely like, and I like Obsidian as a studio. No. I'm the bad guy. Have you ever noticed a good game doesn't need anybody to run defense for it? It just exists. It's just there.
True.
It just does its thing.
True.
So it got me thinking, what are the chances that these communities are the ones that have been ruining games? We've seen so many games come out to seemingly no audience. The quest for the mythical modern audience, where they seem to exist in certain social circles and social media, but the minute that a game hits the market, they evaporate. Where did it go? So it got me thinking.
Because they don't exist, because they don't actually play the video. I feel like these specific people for the modern, quote unquote, modern audience, they don't exist. I straight up believe they don't actually exist because I don't think they play the games.
Who are these games made for? Why are they making them for them? And why aren't they buying them? Maybe it's not me ruining gaming. Maybe it's you. You know how we can take back gaming? You can start making games yourself. And you guys can do that with today's sponsor, boot.dev. We oftentimes
Wow, a sponsorship to make video games? That's crazy. Anyways.
That while yes, in some circles, some of the Avowed criticism can be classified as reaching, the vast majority of it is relatively fair and observable in-game.
They exist. We are the proof. You guys are not the fucking modern audience. Shut up. You guys play Black Myth Wukong, okay? What do you mean you are a modern audience? This chat is the modern audience. Get the fuck out of here.
But there has been an unbelievable amount of white knighting and running defense in the face of criticism and poor sales on Steam. Avowed is incredible, especially when you don't have a YouTuber lying to you. If you hate Avowed, you probably didn't play it. Stop comparing it to Skyrim. But if
they exist, they're the stockholders and corpo bootlickers. Cause why else would they pursue the 10% over the 90%?
Sounds like these days, sounds like these devs are like grown infants. Well, they are, of course, you know. That's the reason why. Like, these people are all emotionally charged. Why wouldn't we compare Avowed to Skyrim, as a game that's came out like what, 10 plus years ago or so? That's probably like the best way to kind of like do a comparison, because I'm like, stuff that we had back then was better compared to what we have now in Avowed, you know. And it's Obsidian, because Obsidian also worked with Bethesda on one of their games. If you guys don't remember, if I remember correctly, it was what is it, Fallout New Vegas, right? Is the one that they made. So you expect their, you know, the amount of work that they, and the stuff that they learned and the stuff they worked on back, and the knowledge and everything from, you know, New Vegas would transfer over to this one. Well,
the game is so incredible, then why does it need this much defense? The same trend then plays out in Avowed Steam reviews. Plenty of positive ratings, yet their words say they're underwhelmed. Game is okay. It's objectively mid. Wish there was a way to rate games I don't recommend or condemn. Some even go out of their way to tell you not to compare it to other games. This isn't Skyrim.
That's
Don't
stupid.
compare it to Baldur's Gate 3 or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's this weird mix of gatekeeping and
That's
defensive
so
posturing,
dumb.
as if people aren't allowed to be
Like, you're supposed to compare games themselves because it's in the genre that's in, and also on top of that, competitiveness is always good in the video game genre scene, you know? It's just always very good. You know, there's also like, you know, fanboys that go a little bit too far, right? But then there's also like people who are normal who just like kind of like criticize the game and stuff and be like, yeah, you know, this game is not that great, you know, it's pretty okay, story's kind of mid, you know. The open world aspect was pretty all right. The only thing apparently you can't do in this game, apparently you can't smack stuff off the table. Like, there's no like fizz objects, you know, like to be able to have some, you know. And plus also there's no repercussion as well from stealing from people too.
critical of something without being treated like enemies. Nobody is saying that you can't enjoy Avowed. If you do, that's great. But if somebody points out that they didn't, that's not an attack. It's called having an opinion.
Yeah,
Suddenly,
of course.
I start hearing that Avowed isn't made for me, that somehow I should have known not to buy it. Like there was some secret label that was warning me, but I had missed it. But last time I checked, well, open world fantasy action RPGs are exactly what I play. That's my genre. That's what I love. But apparently, there was some secret subsection of that genre that I don't fit into. How does that make sense? Oblivion is one of my most favorite games of all time. I just finished Kingdom Come Deliverance, and now I'm playing the sequel. I have hundreds of hours in Skyrim and Fallout. I love The Witcher 3, so how am I not the target audience for this?
The Witcher 3 was the one game that I actually played that was like the fantasy medieval stuff. I don't know, I'm just not really a huge fan of the fantasy medieval stuff, at least from like the Western side. I don't know, something about the Western side just doesn't intrigue me as much compared to the only one that really intrigued me the most was The Witcher. That's pretty much it. All the other ones are kind of like, you know. Hey,
Maybe
Jay.
the problem isn't that Avowed wasn't made for me. Maybe the problem is it was made for no one. Because I've seen a lot of people arguing that games don't need interactivity, that realism isn't necessary, and that games like Avowed don't need to have those kind of features just for the sake of having them. All right, that's fine. Explain this. How does removing basic interactivity from a first-person RPG make it better? Please, take the time to explain that to me. How does it enhance the experience when you can't pick up objects, when you can't touch the world, when you can't interact with doors, when people don't move around towns? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Oblivion and Skyrim are decade-old games within the same genre, using many of the same systems, yet they feel light years ahead in interactivity. And somehow, we're not allowed to compare them. And why is that? Because it makes Avowed look bad? That's the entire point. If a game that came out in 2025 is getting obliterated by a game...
I play Black Myth Wukong just to shit on the game, no diversity, just a shitty monkey with a stick that rips off from Goku. What's worse, this monkey can't climb a tree, invis walls, blocking, immersion, ruin, overall Chinese Chinese Slopgate, Wonder Astrobot 1, Game of the Year. This fucking dude.
Made in 2006 and 2011, and maybe the problem isn't the comparison, maybe the problem is the game itself.
True.
Look at the lengths that they have to go to. Yesterday I saw a Reddit thread pop up that was talking about me and my video on Avowed, and it was titled, "The hate for Avowed has made me realize something. I just fucking hate gaming discourse right now. I just got done with a video reviewing the cope of a game and saying they should expect more from themselves. Honestly, why? Why does it have to be the best game ever? Why can't it be a good romp? People fucking suck, and I'm sad, and I'm over it, man."
That is the most stupidest take I've ever heard. It's almost at the same level of that one guy about the clutch claw shit, you know? Like, who does this have to be, who does it have to be the best game ever? Like, yes, of course it does, because these people are trying to sell a product. It has to be good. It has to be the best it can be, you know? To sell to people. You know, and then get some recognition at the end of the year of how it was this year. Does nobody like want to get like the recognition of like, yeah, this game won like, you know, best audio or best game of the year, best art direction, everything like that, you know, best storytelling or whatever, you know? It's like, come on, man. You could have done something like that. This game just completely flopped on itself. It just never tried. Well, at least the developers never tried anyways, to be honest.
And the top comment read, "Honestly, I think it's helpful to remember that none of this is about gaming and it has nothing to do with the games in question. What we're seeing is a global level slide into extreme partisan rhetoric fueled by both organic and inorganic media algorithms, the same mechanisms accelerating divisive politics that are bleeding into every aspect of life. Watch for keywords, trending rhetoric, and viral talking points. You can find them, or some variation thereof, in every form of online discourse. I'm not arguing any vast conspiracies, only saying it's an evolving consequence of destabilizing global socioeconomics combined with new technology that has allowed propaganda and echo chambers to spread like wildfire. To clarify further, I'm not saying that all criticism of this game or others is invalid. Actual criticism has always existed and is absolutely legitimate. It's only the hyperbolic hatred using all the same keywords that is nothing but a byproduct of a larger dynamic. There are many vested interests in the world who trade on, monetize, and utilize humans' capacity for hatred and fear. They've always been commodities, and now they've become one of the most powerful products in the global market. I'm highlighting this because it needs to be called out. This is the exact kind of caustic, self-defeating discourse that is poisoning gaming culture and the industry. Someone reads the title.
I think a 7 out of 10 is good to have, but the 7 out of 10 game better not be $70.
Listens to 1 minute of a video and goes crying into an echo chamber because they're afraid they have the wrong opinion. Nothing in this entire thread disproves anything that I said, not one point. Instead of actually addressing any of my arguments, they go straight to political straw men, painting me as a grifter, right-wing agitator, or anti-woke, just so they can comfortably dismiss my opinion without actually having to engage with it. Because if you don't slap a label on me first, then you might actually have to consider that I, like many others, just didn't enjoy the game. Here's the thing, I don't talk about politics. I don't care about identity wars.
Same.
I don't make videos talking about DEI, and that's one of the reasons why people like watching my videos in the first place. The only anti-thing I am is anti-bad games, and that video that I had made was about Avowed, a game that felt lifeless, that lacked interactivity, and it was a game that failed to meet my expectations as a fan of this genre. But these people can't process that. They can't seem to accept that somebody might just not like the game, so they have to invent some entirely different narrative, one where they are noble warriors defending against some political invasion, and they have to tell themselves that any criticism of a game is part of some orchestrated culture war, as if it couldn't possibly be that somebody just has independent thoughts about a game.
It's always so stupid that people think that people don't have their own opinions about liking something or disliking something, you know? Like that one person from Do It Night Abyss, that person was like, "Oh, I don't like any of the music in this game." And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, that's fine. But I think the music in this game was actually pretty good in my personal opinion. We even listened to it and I thought it was pretty great.
This is the exact same kind of mindset that is hurting game development today. Instead of confronting valid criticism head-on, developers and their most vocal supporters are retreating into defensive narratives, dismissing critics as toxic, politically motivated, or somehow disingenuous. They are unwilling to listen to actual feedback that could actually help them improve, so instead they settle for reinforcing the same echo chambers that got them where they are in the first place. No one forced any of these people to watch my critique. They sought it out themselves, and they got angry when it didn't reinforce their own opinions. Nothing in that Reddit thread disproved any point that I made. Not a single commenter, not one of them offered a counter-argument explaining why Avowed's design decisions were good. Not one justified why basic interactivity had been stripped from a game in 2025 and how that was acceptable. Instead, they made a conversation about me and content creators because—
I'd be curious if these devs specifically has any experience in this specific field of knowledge about the open world. Because remember, right, Obsidian was the one that broke off. I think if I remember correctly, they broke off from Bethesda because of some internal arguments in between, so they kind of like left, or at least a lot of the devs are still left, or I would assume that's how it was, right? And because they're the ones who made Fallout New Vegas, and apparently if I remember correctly, I think Fallout New Vegas was done really well, but I'm not sure if specifically Obsidian is like has two development teams for this, because they have this game, right? They have Avowed that came out, you know, just recently, and then they have their other game that's going to be coming out, was it this year? What, at the end of this year or the beginning of next year? I don't remember, to be honest. The outer, what is it? The outer space one? The space specific one? I forgot what's it called.
It's easier to attack the messenger than to face the uncomfortable truth. When criticism cannot be engaged with honestly, when people go out of their way to label or dismiss anybody who disagrees with them, all they are doing is insulating developers from reality. This isn't just bad for discourse, it's actively sabotaging the future of game design. If nobody is allowed to point out what doesn't work, how are things ever supposed to get better? This kind of defensive discourse sends mixed signals to the developers, and it creates an environment where studios have no idea who their audience is. Because when people just defend a game for the sake of defending it, when they attack criticism just to be a contrarian, they aren't helping a game, they're destroying it. This is exactly how we get games that are made for no one. Developers start chasing ghosts. They start building games for an imaginary audience that doesn't exist outside of social media echo chambers.
The Outer Wilds wasn't that fun either, in my opinion. Really, it wasn't really that fun. I'm curious if the second one actually like makes it a little bit better, question mark. But the only way to find out if when the game gets released and the reviews are out for the game itself, we'll find out if it'll repeat itself, or if they learn from the first game that like the stuff that they were trying to do didn't work out very well.
Instead of focusing on what makes a game great, they're wasting resources trying to appease an undefined, ever-shifting set of expectations from a transient group looking for validation. It's how we ended up with games like Concord, Forspoken, Dragon Age the Veilguard, and more. Games made for Twitter discourse, not players. Games that weren't fun, but were constantly propped up by people that needed them to succeed for personal reasons. Look at the ridiculous priorities that make it into modern games today. Games designed around whether or not you can pet a dog rather than whether or not it actually plays well. This is why Ubisoft thinks it's worth bragging about how many cats you can have in your village in Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's why
Fallout New Vegas was well received, but missed the sale target by a small amount. Yeah, because I heard it was received very well, and it was from the same studio that Obsidian, or at least some of the people from Obsidian. Well, I don't know. I don't really know if Obsidian was part of their dev team group and broke off, or some of the people left and made their own studio. I have no idea, to be honest, because we've been seeing a lot of people who have been leaving their main like studios to go make up a small studio.
Developers are spending time designing pointless meme bait mechanics instead of actually refining their gameplay. Look at some of the most common demands that we've seen over the last couple of years. Does the game let me pet the dog? Why are female characters so sexualized? Baldur's Gate 3 would have done better if it was an action RPG. Elden Ring needs a difficulty slider, and it has an accessibility problem. These aren't real design critiques. These are discourse points. These are demands from people that engage with gaming as a conversation piece, not as a hobby. Developers keep prioritizing the wrong things, chasing an audience that only exists on Twitter and Reddit. And then
they definitely do chase an audience that basically doesn't exist. But hey, man, if they want to chase it, that's fine. They can lay off more people for them to actually understand and learn that these are not your actual audiences.
They sit back and wonder why their games don't sell. Criticism is necessary. It's how this industry improves. It's how bad design gets corrected and good design evolves. But the second you start insulating a game from criticism, the second you start to punish people for legitimate complaints, you aren't protecting the game. You're ensuring that the next one is going to be even worse. You know, not too long ago, I was bringing up how people are so afraid of criticism today. So many people are afraid of any type of negative.
Bro, there's so many people like that now.
See somebody over on Twitter put out their opinion, and if it gets rejected or criticized in any way, they'll go protected or they'll delete their account. That writer that everybody likes to hate, Alyssa Mercante, she posted talking about how anybody that was criticizing about, or some of the people that are criticizing about, aren't adding anything meaningful to the industry. I commented back simply saying that that's funny because they're actually contributing with their money, which is likely the most important contribution of all, and protected. These are the kind of opinions that are shaping games. Game developers will always lean towards their fans because they're most likely the people that will buy the game in the future or their next game or whatever it might be. But the problem is that if you're not listening to those that are criticizing your games, if you're being protected from people that are trying to criticize your games, well, then your audience is going to get smaller and smaller each passing year.
Yep.
If you're down to the point where you have to have your fan base out there telling people not to compare a $70 AAA full-priced game to games made over a decade ago, you're in a real bad place. You're in a very, very bad place. This is why we get tone-deaf games. They are making games for their protectors. And these folks are contrarians. They see people that are out there and they see themselves as white knights, and they have to defend the game that they like because, well, they can't have a wrong opinion. And the only way to not have a wrong opinion is to go after those people. Anytime they see negative comments, it sends their blood pressure up over 140. They're pulling their blinds down and checking out the window to look outside. Negative discourse can't exist. And because of that, it's painting an incomplete picture for some of these games for what a general audience actually looks like. And that's why they're not finding an audience that resonates with some of these games.
Well, it doesn't really resonate with anybody, to be honest. It definitely doesn't resonate with anybody because, you know, these are supposed to be video games. They're supposed to take you into another world or so. The gaming industry is facing the same problem with the U.S. comics. These political people are somehow getting in these jobs and are given full control. And that's the one thing that's always pretty weird about it, is that these people aren't in the like the genre that they're working in or assigned or hired or anything. They're not like creative whatsoever. They're kind of more on this weird agenda that they have to do or push out or something like that, you know? It's just weird. It's just very weird. I'm just like, we play video games to escape realism, you know? We don't play video games to be back into realism, you know? That's just not how it works here. Hey, Sal.
And now while the players are definitely making their contribution to muddying the water and making it difficult for some of these studios to nail down who their audience is, it doesn't help that these developers are looking in all the wrong places as well.
Yep.
I saw a tweet the other day from Michael Dowse, Larian Studios head of publishing, and it really hit the nail on the head because he was talking about how so many of these big budget games don't actually tell players what they are before launch, nor do they understand who that audience is before they launch. They rely on billboards, hype, and broad marketing campaigns, but they fail to build any real relevance or resonance before they release. It's a completely avoidable disaster, but it keeps happening because these games are assuming that they have an audience before actually trying to earn one. And that's where this industry keeps going wrong, because for years now, publishers have still been relying on outdated methods to try to figure out what players want. Metrics, surveys, focus groups, and curated fan feedback that's painting a imaginary picture of what that audience actually looks like. Now, what makes matters even worse is today's modern internet culture where people don't actually say what they think. They say what they think they're supposed to say. They posture, they virtue signal, they perform for social approval, and if you're a game developer that's listening to that, well, you're going to get wildly inaccurate data on what players actually want. That's how we end up with insane takes like PC Gamer's recent article claiming that today's teens and young adults aren't interested in romance in video games. Really, the same teenagers and young adults that are obsessing and shipping Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail characters.
Don't forget the Zenless Zone 1. Don't forget the Zenless Zone 0. And plus you got Eve. You got Eve from Stellar Blade. That's a crazy wild tech. I don't know, man. I feel like the young audiences are like in their puberty stage, so they're all like fucking horny as shit, dude.
The same ones fueling the insane success of visual novels and dating sims, they don't want romance. Interesting. But because a survey
Shit, take a look at the like some of the famous VTubers, you know, a lot of them are single, right? A lot of them are single and they want to, you know, they want to fuck. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Granted, I say that because they're younger than me, so that's the only reason why. Most of them are very, very, very young. Well, not very young, but like younger than me. That's like what the web browsers do now. But in the communities, in the small vocal minorities, I feel like people enjoy. People don't have any problems with romance and like stuff like that in the games or so. You know, I think it's like if it's forced or so, or very awkwardly. Like what is it? Dragon Age: The Veilguard is the one that is the best example of how awkward it is.
Told them otherwise. Now developers are going to run with that and take it seriously and start making games under the assumption that this is what people want. This is what happens when you rely on performative data rather than actual engagement. If today's teens and young adults don't care about romance, explain why Baldur's Gate 3 blew up over its character.
That's true. That's true. Gooning was the most recent word to be made for people who like enjoy. Like you have fucking love in deep space, you know. You have love in deep space. You have fucking the Rule 34 of Genshin Impact, the Rule 34 of Honkai Star Rail, and also Zenless Zone 0, Withering Waves, you know? So you have all this stuff, you know?
character interactions. Explain why Love in Deep Space pulled nearly $500 million
That's
in
true.
revenue. Because here's the
That's
thing,
true.
surveys, focus groups, and social media feedback today aren't about truth, it's about posturing. We live in a world where people unironically call a 21-year-old a former teen in a protected class, where any
What?
romance in media is scrutinized under a moral microscope, where people are constantly worried about how their opinions will be perceived. And when that's the environment in which you're conducting surveys, you are never going to get honest answers. That's why the best way for you to be able to understand what players want isn't to ask them, it's actually just to go watch what they're playing. Look at the games that have stood the test of time. Dark Souls didn't need to pander to younger audiences to be loved by younger players. Elden Ring didn't need focus groups to figure out whether or not it was a worthwhile investment. Baldur's Gate 3 didn't need to be rewritten for modern sensibilities to be the biggest RPG in years. Marvel Rivals doesn't need to have socially safe designs to be popular. The most successful games across multiple generations are the ones that focused on simply being great games. They weren't built for a specific demographic. They weren't designed to be socially approved. And that's what made them timeless. But I think the biggest mistake that these developers are making isn't just using bad data, it's that they're trying to forcefully blend audiences that don't need to be blended.
Remember, right? The people who are in the higher ups in the video game industry, which are the corporal people, they don't know what's trending. They don't keep up with trends whatsoever, right? So that's why they have these, like, I assume they have like these specific consultant people or different specific people kind of like, you know, supposed to fill in the gap for them, because these people who are like the suits in charge, right? They don't really know what's hip and what's trending, you know? That's why usually specifically a lot of the games fail, because they're not keeping up to the trends and what's hip. But granted, they're not really paying attention to their core audience at the same time, because they like to get these consultant firms, you know? They like to ask these consultant firms about like, oh, what's new, what's trending. And the worst part about it is that a lot of these consultant firms don't even know what the fuck is happening in the video game industry. So yeah, it's always 5 years behind. But granted, right? Video games are always in development, so they're usually never ready in time for these kind of hips trends. That's why the only reason I'm like for us, for when it comes to hip trending, right? Like if they see like what Black Myth Wukong succeeding, I wouldn't be surprised if they make another game, like some other studio makes something similar, Black Myth Wukong, in the next, I don't know, 10 years or so, you know?
Instead of committing to a clear vision, they're trying to make a game that appeals to both youth and...
Consultants is fine. Like I have no problem. The problem is like the consultants of who they're hiring, and the way how like you can have a different opinion about a story before publishing a game, or before, you know, before producing a game. The problem is the type of people they hire for consultants is the problem, you know? It's no problem to have like a middleman or something to, you know, take a look at a script, you know, or do all this other thing, and, you know, and all this other stuff. It's just the people themselves who they hire, or the company itself, of which specific company they hire. Like Sweet Baby Inc. is for an example, right? Worst company around there, worst type of people there. You know, it's like, why would you ever want to hire these specific people? I'm like, if you want to hire consultant firms, you should probably find somebody who knows about the whole video game genre, see what's happening in the video game industry in the perspective of a gamer, you know, compared to asking someone else from like Sweet Baby Inc. who are mostly like, remember, like in the video, right? They said you should sit down with your higher ups and scare them if they don't do stuff like this. I'm like, that's not a good way to go with things like that, you know? It's just not good. That's terrible. Why would you want to scare your higher ups? That makes no fucking sense, you know? Don't you want to inform your higher ups and be like, hey, you know, we got this chart here, this is about this, and it's all about that, and, you know, this and that, this is what's happening in the video game industry, you know, this is what people are talking about, this is what the games are kind of like exploding now, the genres here, and this and that, and all this shit, you know? Like, that's the kind of person I would prefer to, like, hire, you know, to keep tabs on, like, the video game industry.
adults at the same time, and in the process, they're making games that don't resonate with anyone.
Yeah.
You can't be the only one that's noticing how many mature-rated games are suffering from an identity crisis. They want to tackle mature topics, but they refuse to actually write or present them maturely. They soften the language, sanitize the characters, and dull the edges of their stories, leaving players with something that feels completely disconnected from its own themes. The reality is, mature games, or any game for that matter, really doesn't need to be designed for a specific age group.
It almost feels like we're kind of losing like rated M for mature games. I don't know. Like, yeah, we do have them, right? But it just feels softer. It feels like they're not really aimed for maturity. It kind of mostly aims for teens and lower, trying to basically grab the whole pie.
Great games are ageless. Everyone appreciates a great game, regardless of their age.
Yeah.
And the moment that you start tweaking the language, tone, and the content to be able to pander to a specific demographic is the minute that you're going to lose the entire audience altogether. This is why, from my perspective, I don't think it's really worthwhile to target age demographics specifically in video games. Unless you're actually making a game specifically for children or specifically for adults, there really isn't any reason to design a game around who it should be for. Instead, you should be focusing on what makes that game engaging. Look at the games that have stood the test of time: Halo, Dark Souls, Final Fantasy, The Elder Scrolls, Zelda, Super Mario. People who grew up playing these games didn't stop loving them when they turned 30, and guess what? Teens and young adults that are still playing those games today love those games for the same reasons. The things we loved when we were younger shaped our preferences when we got older. How many people still listen to the same music that they loved in high school? How many games do we still play that defined our childhood, or games that are like them? The core of what we find cool, exciting, or engaging stays remarkably consistent throughout our entire life. That's why games don't really need to fit a tailored specific demographic. It just needs to tap into the fundamental love of excitement, challenge, and immersion. Yet for some odd reason, modern game developers, specifically in the US more than other places, don't seem to really understand this. Instead of making a great game, they're obsessing over trying to appeal to two different audiences at the exact same time. Adults because they have the money, and teenagers because they think that's the best way for them to stay relevant. And as a result, we start seeing these games that are these Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah, but let's remember this. Who has the money? The adults or the teens that are still in high school? I feel like the adults hold the most money compared to teens, you know? Mature games and movies are hard to market and to profit on the movie side. They want to make toys and other merchandise aimed for kids / parents. Yeah, but the problem is if you're trying to please everybody, you're just not gonna please anybody at all at that period, you know? It's the same thing with some of the Marvel movies, right? There's some Marvel movies that should be rated M for mature, but then they don't do it, you know, because you get less sales, right? But the problem is they're spending fucking shit tons of money on the budget, you know, which is absurd amount of like money that they're spending on the budget wise, which makes zero sense to be spending this much money for a movie. I don't know. I think if M-rated stuff or so had like a smaller budget, then it'd be a different story, you know? These video game consultants are linked to DEI funding companies, especially from Europe, Switzerland, and Spain, Sweden, and Portugal. Yeah.
Monstrosities that are trying to be everything for everyone but end up resonating with no one. Look at Veilguard. I keep coming back to this game, but it really is the perfect onion of poor game design and audience recognition. The more you peel back, the more misguided you find it is. I mean, think about it. The characters in the game, androgynous and sterile, yet for some odd reason they include romance. Why would you put romance into a game that you can't actually be attracted to the characters that are in the game in the first place? The writing was over-explained, infantilized, and completely disconnected from the game's supposed mature themes. The core fan base, likely in their 30s, get treated like children. This is why so many modern games end up...
This is definitely giving off the, what is the Fortnite-ification, of this art style specifically, when all the other Dragon Age games were not like this whatsoever. Like I feel like when initially they were making this into a live service, I bet you they went with this specific art style trying to cater for the Fortnite fan base because of the colorfulness. When let me see. 2015. So apparently they began development in 2015. Okay. And this game came out on 2017. It was originally planned to be as a live service game and develop was revisioned as a single player game titled following the success of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order in 2019. The game's approach combat was influenced by Sony's God of War in 2018. What was popular in 2015? Dragon Age Inquisition was more colorful, but still had a dark tone. But it didn't have the this specific art style though. This weird whatever this weird art style is, you know? Let me see. They had The Witcher 3 in 2015, Rocket League. They had Bloodborne, Fallout 4, Undertale, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Metal Gear Solid 5, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. We had Black Ops 3, Star Wars Battlefront. I'm curious or so. So if this game started in 2015, when did it start changing the art style? I'd be curious. So let me see. So 2015. And then it got popular in 2019. Fortnite came out in 2017. This game hasn't been in development for like 9 years, basically. Yeah, 9 years. That's crazy a long time for 9 years. And this is what they decided. And then this is what they decided to create in those 9 years. Granted, they had to switch it from a live service to this, basically.
Solace because they aren't being designed with a strong creative vision. They aren't being designed.
I'm
for a
curious
real
on that.
audience. They're being designed to pass through multiple layers of corporate approval, sensitivity checks, and marketing analysis, stripping away anything that makes them feel personal, passionate, or bold. Instead of creating something great and letting it find its audience, they're trying to chase some imaginary audience that doesn't actually exist. The best games don't need to be age restricted to find success, they just need to be authentic. That's why games like Elden Ring and Monster Hunter pull players from across multiple generations, because they focus on gameplay first, and that's the most important thing. They don't compromise to fit some imagined modern sensibility. They don't try to be everything.
Well, except for this Monster Hunter Wilds. This Monster Hunter Wilds feels a little bit weird. Not a fan of the talking cat. I don't know why they decided to implement a talking cat this time around, personally. Not really a huge fan of it. I don't know why. I guess for marketing reasons, I guess, to sell the plushie or so. But, like, that's the only thing I can think of. Dragon Age Woke Guard was originally a live service, so a change in color and tone is what they thought they had to change. That's my guess. You think so? You think that that'd probably be the reason? You think it's to cater the younger audience or so for this specific art style? Because I thought Fortnite came out a little bit more earlier, that's why. But I guess not.
Everyone. I get that my criticism and language at times may be...
They flip-flop back and forth?
That's because it's authentic. That's because I'm saying what I mean, and I mean what I say, and my opinions, I'm expressing them openly. And I'm going to get some critical feedback out of it. I'm going to get some people that are critical of me, and guess what? I listen to that stuff.
Same as well.
That's how you get better. You need that to be able to improve. But when you have audiences that are out there that are trying to shield games from criticism, shield these developers from the people that don't like their games... Well, they're doing far more harm than they actually know.
Yeah.
Also, it's just rat behavior and it deserves to be called out.
Roach.
You know, these companies have to adjust and adapt. Their methods are outdated. The internet is often inauthentic. And because of that, you have misled creatives that are using performative developers to make performative games for performative audiences, a whole lot of pretending, a whole lot of bad data, and a whole lot of games without any audience. You need observable data. This industry is evolving to the point where it's becoming much more scientific. You need to actually observe your subject, see what they want, see what they're doing, and then iterate on that. You know, I've talked about this before, but I was in on Baldur's Gate 3's early access. Incredible journey. Developer notes were really detailed. The feedback that we would get, the panels from hell, the updates that they would do. The entire time, while they were collecting data, they were doing polls and stuff like that as well. But for the most part, they just sat back and watched how people interacted with the game. What did people try to do the most? What did they, you know, what spells did they use? What classes did they pick? What choices did they make? They took that data and then iterated on it, and they just acted as a tailor, fitting it like a glove to the player. And that
Companies like to make things for a younger audience. Deadpool was never going to happen because of how mature it was. Ryan Reynolds had to fight to make it happen. That's true. That's true. But a lot of audiences do want to see, you know, a rated M version of these specific, because remember, right? Like, for example, right? Star Wars Battlefront. A lot of people would have loved to see, like, you know, stormtroopers or like droids getting cut in half or so when you're using a lightsaber, you know, a lightsaber. A lot of people actually did want that, you know. So there actually is an audience for these kinds of specific, like, you know, media. Will they make like huge money? No, probably not. Well, it just depends. It really depends now compared to how it was, but there are people who do actually want that one, and the best example is the Star Wars Battlefront debacle that happened a while ago. Like, someone had to mod it in that specific thing, and there was like a lot of people who in the comment sections that was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, watch, let me see. Let me see. Well, they had this stuff here too as well from freaking from Asmongold. So, you know. 1.5 million views. So there are people who actually do want something like this, you know. My point is that you have to fight the leaderships and shareholders because they don't see mature title making money compared to the old ways. Make products for the young people. Make merchandise. Is the question is not the question is right? Who fed them this idea that they need to do this and this? See, that's one of the big things too, as well. Is like who gave them this idea for them to be like, oh, there's no way we can make money off of this. You know, there's just no way. It's impossible. You know. Like, that's the question, is like, who fed them this idea? It's someone has to have fed them this idea in order for them to say these things, you know? Remember, Star Wars was for kids a long time ago, but that fan base grew up now. And that's why a lot of, you know, the parents who their kids are, you know, showed them the old Star Wars, you know, and that's about it. Someone must have had influence or so to tell them these things, you know, about like, no, you can't make money or so. I don't know. Let me see. Well, you got your good old Call of Duty, of course. Was the most successful. The old school, you know, these rated M games specifically. God of War 3. Conker's Bad Fur Day. I don't know. They also consult therapists to make their games more addictive, and addiction is easier when targeting younger over older. There is definitely a lot of mind games, because if I remember correctly, they do hire these kind of specific consultants, quotation marks consultants, right? To tell them, I feel like these are the people who brainwash these other people specifically, telling them like, no, you're not gonna make that much money, you know, you won't make that much money. You gotta brainwash the kids, you know, you gotta get them hooked, get them addicted, you know, to in their ecosystem.
That's how you get great games. That's what you have to do nowadays. You can't come up with some pre-designed audience anymore. That doesn't work. You can't go and read social media. You can't watch, you know, you can't listen to like things that are said on Twitter or on Reddit, because oftentimes people aren't really saying what they mean. They're just saying whatever they can to get the most people to agree with them, because they need that interaction. They need to be accepted, baby. Right here. Get that validation right into my veins. But that's what you have to do. You have to ignore that kind of stuff. You have to be dynamic. And I think a lot of these companies are still stuck in their ways. And because of that,
they're scared.
It's leading to a lot of these games failing to find an audience. You know, I love topics like this. You guys got to keep in mind, I am a marketing major that got into construction. I have a degree that I never got to use. It's the whole reason I made a YouTube channel to begin with, was because I wanted to understand what players' needs were. I wanted to understand how
that's interesting.
Finding an audience, or how they were failing to find an audience, and I wanted to be somebody that could advocate for games to be able to reach audiences better. I think that once I get a little bit more comfortable with YouTube and I feel a little bit more stable on the platform, I'll probably start to try to get into at least consulting with marketing and, you know, customer outreach and stuff like that, because I think that personally, I think I could do a lot of help. I don't know. There's probably plenty of people that are out there, especially on Reddit apparently, that wouldn't want me to do anything of the sort. So I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, well, like the video, share it with your friends.
That was a good video. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like there's always a lot of problems when it comes to these specific things. These situations themselves. But it seems to me that these companies enjoy committing seppuku, but refuses to admit it. Like, they don't want to innovate. They're scared. They really are scared to, you know, try something new, to innovate. They always like sticking the ways how they is, and then they're also catering to, you know, people are scared of change. It is, because that's part of human nature at the end of the day. People are scared of change. Well, take a look at the AI, you know, industry itself, especially in the AI art, you know, in the art department, you know. That's just how it is. But when people decide to make the change for the better, do it and be responsible for it. Well, unfortunately, you know, people who decided to take the AI stuff and kind of basically replace artists. For me personally, I'd rather have, you know, AI art, or at least the AI machine technology work with artists at the same time, you know, work together simultaneously, hold each other's hand, and be able to work with one another, you know, work from each other's back, you know, instead of like, you know, bickering and hating on each other, you know. I don't know. Like I said, right, that's how I see AI art, or AI in general with art, is like, I'd rather work with it than against it, you know, or have it take over my entire process, you know. Yeah, you shouldn't be relying on it. You should always be using it as like concept art or anything, like, or starting off a basis and everything. But yeah, anyway, that's a whole different topic that we can talk about. But anyways, that's the end of the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe, do all that fancy jazzy stuff. Yeah, and I think personally the companies themselves, at least the higher ups or so, I feel like they're just scared. They're definitely scared. Definitely someone is starting fed them really like not the right decisions, you know. Just search up top says selling games and movies, and a good chunk of them are PG. Rare to have a mature title to be there other than GTA. Yeah, but you have Call of Duty though. Call of Duty has always been successful almost like every single year. And it's always like what, rated M for mature? What else do you have? You also got Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is the origins of why the rating systems became a thing because of the first, what is it? The first Mortal Kombat, right? I think it was the first Mortal Kombat game that caused that debacle and everything. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Didn't Shadows of War have the best engine that the NPCs would recognize? Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much it. That's the end of the video. And peace.